Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below and hit that subscribe button to catch all our latest content updates. This particular Thursday night was supposed to be routine. Well, as routine as my colleague Emma's photography exhibition could be. Spring in Manhattan always had its charm, the gentle breeze carrying cherry blossom petals, the soft hum of evening traffic, and street lamps beginning to twinkle as dusk settled over the city. I made my way to the gallery expecting the usual crowd, perhaps some stimulating dialogue, a cocktail or two, and maybe a few interesting characters. What I never anticipated was that this evening would become the opening chapter of something completely unexpected. The gallery buzzed with energy and warmth. Exposed brick walls displayed striking photographs while the diverse crowd added their own artistic flair to the atmosphere. There were artists with vibrant tattoos, photographers sporting vintage cameras, and critics passionately debating composition techniques. I picked up a glass of red wine and meandered through the exhibition until my eyes landed on him. He sat casually at the small bar area, composed and self-assured, as if the surrounding commotion couldn't touch his inner calm. His charcoal gray sweater was perfectly fitted, distinguished silver threading through his dark hair, and a sleek timepiece adorned his wrist. Clearly not your typical gallery regular, and definitely not someone you'd forget easily. There was something magnetic about him. Naturally, I found myself stealing glances longer than appropriate. And naturally, that's precisely when my wine glass decided to slip from my grasp. Perfect introduction, right? Are you okay? His voice was rich, with just a hint of raspiness. I quickly bent down, retrieved the glass, and flashed what I hoped was a casual smile. Just one of life's little surprises, I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. But those often lead to the best experiences, he responded smoothly, then gestured to the empty stool beside him. Care to join me? How could I possibly decline? We began chatting, and I learned his name was David. He worked as a rare book dealer and had an endless collection of fascinating tales about the city's literary scene in the early 2000s. I found myself genuinely captivated, laughing at his dry wit and the way his voice seemed to wrap around each word. When I mentioned that my go-to meal was usually takeout Chinese, he chuckled and said, "Well, that's something we'll have to remedy immediately." Honestly, I wasn't opposed to the idea. The rest of the evening flew by in a blur of laughter, debates about photography techniques, and discussions about art pieces whose deeper meanings, I sheepishly admitted, went over my head. Then suddenly he said, "I know this intimate wine bar that serves exceptional Burgundy. Interested?" My pulse quickened because this was undoubtedly the most intriguing person I'd encountered in months. I smiled. "Lead the way." David drove us to a tucked-away Italian bistro, hidden among the quieter side streets away from the city's chaos. Soft lighting from vintage lamp posts filtered through large windows, and the air was filled with the scent of fresh rain, cardamom, and the earthy aroma of late spring. He opened my door, his hand gently resting on my shoulder, a touch that felt warmer than the evening breeze. That simple gesture sent a small thrill through me, though I couldn't quite identify if it was excitement, curiosity, or something else entirely. Inside, the ambience was intimate. Antique light fixtures cast a golden glow over polished mahogany tables, while soft jazz melodies drifted lazily from hidden speakers. Every patron seemed to be there for the same reason: to savor, to indulge, to truly experience the moment. "Their osso buco is extraordinary," David mentioned casually, his fingers tracing the wine menu's edge. I grinned, curious about what other surprises awaited. "Are you implying I have no appreciation for fine Italian cuisine?" He looked up with a mischievous smile. "I'm saying I want to introduce you to something special." And introduce me he did. The Burgundy he selected was so complex and velvety that, after my first taste, I closed my eyes, savoring every note. When the osso buco arrived tender, aromatic, with a rich saffron sauce, I nearly sighed with pure pleasure. "Consider my entire worldview officially changed," I murmured, setting down my fork and reaching for my wine. David's laugh was genuine and warm. I found myself drawn to that sound. It felt authentic. "Mission accomplished for tonight," he said with satisfaction. I studied his face across the table. The candlelight highlighted his strong jawline, the curve of his lips, the depth in his eyes. His gaze was steady, almost languid, like someone who knew how to appreciate life's finer moments without rushing them. I leaned forward slightly. "So tell me, what brought you to Emma's exhibition tonight?" He didn't look away. The air between us seemed to shimmer with unspoken possibility. I was searching for something fresh. Or perhaps someone, he said quietly. My heart skipped. We sat in comfortable silence, but that quiet felt more significant than any conversation. In that instant, I realized I was being drawn into something deeper. This man wasn't just pleasant company or a charming dinner companion, he was awakening something within me that I wasn't sure I was prepared to explore. The following week passed like a dream sequence. David called the very next morning, his voice as warm as that burgundy we'd shared. We arranged another meeting, and I couldn't stop my mind from racing. Who was this person? Why did he affect me this way? And most importantly, why was I so nervous about someone who could easily be, well, let's be honest, old enough to be my father? The evening we met again was crisp and cool. I stood in my apartment lobby wearing my favorite distressed denim jacket and boots that had seen better days, items I'd always considered stylish but now seemed embarrassingly casual. He pulled up in a vintage Mustang, midnight blue and gleaming as if it had just left a classic car showcase. And David himself looked like he'd stepped from the pages of a luxury lifestyle magazine. Charcoal sweater, perfectly tailored blazer, the subtle scent of expensive cologne mixing with the evening air. Ready? He asked, stepping out to open my door. I nodded, though my insides were doing backflips. My inner voice was screaming, "Girl, you've definitely wandered into the wrong league." His apartment was even more overwhelming. It wasn't just a living space, it was a carefully curated collection. Vintage books lined the walls like literary soldiers. A leather sectional that probably cost more than my annual coffee shop wages dominated the room. And prominently displayed was a rowing machine. My demanding companion, he joked, noticing my stare. I laughed, but inside I felt slightly intimidated. Every item seemed to have significance, history, purpose. And there I was, just a girl in a denim jacket. David sensed my unease and said gently, "You know, I don't collect these things for their monetary value. They're memories. Like this first edition here." He pulled a book from the shelf. This was the first rare book I ever purchased when I turned 21. Which book? I asked, surprised by how readily he shared these personal details. Kerouac's On the Road. Rebellious choice for a business student, I suppose. I smiled. Definitely rebellious. He grinned. Back then I was fighting the system. Now I'm trying to master self-discipline. Self-discipline was an understatement. I discovered this when he showed me his daily schedule. 5:30 a.m., workouts, protein smoothies, meditation, work. When you reach your 50s, you realize your body is your most important investment. Neglect it now, and you'll pay the price later. Then came the nutrition lecture. Quinoa, wild salmon, kale, blueberries. Sounds like a wellness influencer's dream menu. I interrupted, laughing. What's your guilty pleasure? Occasionally dark chocolate. What about you? Instant ramen, pizza, sometimes a salad if I'm feeling ambitious. He shook his head, but his eyes twinkled with amusement. We're going to have to expand your palate. And expand it he did. The next morning, after we'd stayed up late watching classic films on his leather couch, he handed me a glass of vibrant green liquid, spinach and pineapple smoothie. Drink up. I took a sip and nearly choked. This is intense. It's excellent for mental clarity. He winked. By evening's end, I knew he visited the gym 4 times weekly, slept on a memory foam mattress specifically designed for spinal alignment, and even used specialized skincare products. This man was, without exaggeration, a wellness enthusiast, but the real fun began when he offered to teach me the foxtrot. We stood in his kitchen while he played a Dean Martin record, and soon the entire apartment echoed with our laughter. The neighbors must have thought someone was in distress because 30 minutes later, someone knocked firmly. Building management. We received a noise complaint. We froze, then burst into even harder laughter. When the building manager saw us, he frowned initially, then couldn't help but chuckle. Well, at least someone's enjoying themselves, he said. As he left, that night I realized David was more than just an attractive man with expensive taste and a classic car. He was someone who could find magic in simple moments, someone who could transform an ordinary evening into something memorable. But my biggest revelation came the following week. The next week was a whirlwind of shared experiences. We met almost daily, sometimes at contemporary art galleries where he impressed me with his knowledge of modern sculpture. It's not just abstract shapes, it's a commentary on urban isolation, sometimes at that intimate Italian bistro that had become our regular spot. But it was his weekend invitation that truly intrigued me. I have a cottage in the Catskills. How about we escape the city for a weekend? I agreed, though inside I was trembling with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. What awaited me there? Candlelit dinners, fine wine, or something more profound? The drive took roughly 3 hours. The Mustang glided along winding mountain roads, while I gazed out at the spectacular autumn foliage, feeling butterflies in my stomach. Nervous? He asked, glancing at me briefly. A little, I admitted. Don't be. I just want to share a place. That's special to me. When we arrived, I understood why he treasured this retreat. It wasn't just a weekend getaway, it was a sanctuary. A 2-story stone cottage with forest green shutters, surrounded by towering oaks already displaying their fall colors. The backyard featured a stone patio with rustic furniture and a fire pit. Beyond that, a small lake reflected the sky. This is breathtaking, I whispered. I'm glad you appreciate it. He smiled, helping me from the car. The interior was equally charming. Exposed wooden beams, vintage photographs on the walls, books scattered throughout every room. Each detail seemed to hold a piece of his soul. We spent the day hiking lakeside trails, skipping stones, and discussing everything from philosophy to favorite childhood memories. That evening, he opened a bottle of wine he claimed was older than I was. This is a 1997 Barolo, he explained, pouring the deep red liquid into glasses. One of the finest vintages in my collection. I took a sip and felt the world slow down around me. This is incredible, I breathed. He smiled knowingly. See? Sometimes it's worth taking risks and trying new things. That night changed everything. When he took my hand and led me upstairs, I felt my heartbeat accelerate. His bedroom was simple yet elegant, a king-sized bed with a rustic wooden frame, a window overlooking the moonlit lake, the fresh scent of pine drifting through slightly open windows. When he removed his sweater, I nearly gasped. This man completely shattered any stereotypes about middle age. His physique was lean and strong, clearly the result of dedicated fitness, and well, let's just say if I was expecting a compact car, I got a luxury SUV instead. Wow, I breathed when I noticed my obvious surprise. What? He grinned. You think I eat quinoa purely for fun? I laughed, but the laughter quickly transformed into something else, something indescribable. The next morning I woke earlier than usual. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, and David was already doing yoga on the lakeside deck. He moved with such fluid grace, as if he existed outside of time. Good morning, he said when he spotted me. Good morning, I smiled, feeling slightly self-conscious. How did you sleep? Wonderfully. Though there's something I need to tell you. What's that? Your neighbors back in the city were right, you really are dangerous. He laughed and walked over, wrapping his arms around my waist. You know what I think? That you might be the dangerous one here. He was absolutely right. From that moment, I realized our connection had evolved beyond simple romance. It was something deeper, more powerful, almost primal. But the real challenge arrived when I decided to introduce him to my parents. When I informed my parents I was dating someone older than them, their reaction was explosive. Mom nearly dropped her famous banana bread, and Dad, usually as calm as a still pond, began pacing the living room in agitated circles. Are you certain this isn't some kind of scam artist? Mom asked, adjusting her reading glasses. Or maybe he's in some kind of cult, Dad added, crossing his arms defensively. I sighed deeply. Listen, he's just special. You'll meet him and understand. The next day, David arrived at their house in his Mustang, looking impeccable in a cream cable knit sweater, dark jeans, and a leather jacket. When he stepped out of the car, Dad, standing on the front porch in his weekend gardening clothes, raised an eyebrow. So that's your potential son-in-law? He muttered in my ear. Dad, you promised to be nice. I hissed back. David approached confidently and extended his hand. David, pleasure to meet you. Dad shook it but couldn't resist commenting. So you're planning to marry my daughter? You realize you're barely 3 years younger than me? David grinned. Didn't you marry your wife when you were her age? Dad paused, then suddenly burst out laughing. All right, I like you. Let's take a look at that car of yours. An hour later, they returned with takeout burgers and a 6-pack of craft beer. Apparently, David had not only discussed vintage automobiles with Dad, but had also demonstrated proper parallel parking technique. From that day forward, they began weekly phone calls to debate classic car restoration, but Mom took much longer to warm up. She bombarded him with questions. Does he have children? Are you sure he's not married? What if he passes away before you do? Everything changed when David gave her a vintage jewelry box for her birthday. Mom, who collected travel postcards, actually cried over the gift for the first time I could remember. Even your father never gave me anything this thoughtful, she sobbed. David became her favorite after that. They cooked together regularly. He taught her to prepare authentic risotto, and she shared her secret recipe for borscht, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. When we attended his friends' dinner parties, I felt like a college student who'd wandered into a faculty meeting. His social circle discussed wine investments, debated real estate markets, and listened to classical music. I preferred podcasts and indie rock. One day he attempted to create a TikTok account. At 55, I'm learning to make lifestyle content, he said, squinting at his phone screen. I laughed. That's definitely not your demographic. Why not? He protested. I could gain quite a following. Sure, if you make videos about proper wine storage or vintage book collecting. He rolled his eyes, but gave it a try anyway. His video received 150 views. Our first major argument erupted when I wanted to attend a music festival and he suggested the symphony instead. You know I can't appreciate classical music, I said. And you know I can't tolerate crowds and poor acoustics, he countered. Finally, he surprised me by putting on a denim jacket and accompanying me to a rock concert. When I saw him nodding along to the Black Keys, I realized this man was willing to step outside his comfort zone for me. Over time, I discovered that our age difference wasn't an obstacle, but rather a unique opportunity. We balanced each other perfectly. He taught me sophistication and depth. I showed him how to embrace spontaneity and joy. Now, when I reflect on our story, I understand that love recognizes no boundaries, only hearts that are ready to connect. And yes, if anyone tells you that you can't fall for someone significantly older, just smile knowingly. Because sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin exactly where others feared.